the flying ninjas, Ninjas Return, and ninjas are always entertaining.
Well, that was it. There was a huge moment in the market where like kung fu movies and karate movies were,
and even music. Remember kung fu fighting and it was big. Yeah.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
It was a cultural wave.
Absolutely.
And I think it caught all of us. You know, it caught me.
There's always been like I was actually making fun of this. We were in CVS and looking at the makeup, and there's a section now for I guess K-beauty, like Korean beauty products that are now over here, and it kind of cracked me up because I teach Tai Chi, so I'm big into Far Eastern culture and all that kind of thing. But I was kind of laughing at how Westerners have, we've always been intrigued by what comes out of the Far East.
Always.
Which is it's interesting. It has always seemed exotic to us. And I mean, you have like the guys with the Asian fetish. People love the martial arts. Most people love the martial arts. I remember it was a big thing when I was in high school. Who could use chopsticks the best, you know, and having to learn that skill. And funny enough, I ended up having lunch at a Taoist temple with a group that was training with me for a little bit, and they invited Shane and I over for breakfast or for lunch. And we grabbed, they were nice enough, they put forks and Western utensils out, but there were chopsticks available. And we grabbed them and we started eating. And they looked at us like, oh my God, you know how to use chopsticks, which showed such a disconnect between Far East and West, because a lot of, like, we are strangely obsessed with Far Eastern culture. And so learning how to prepare certain meals and use chopsticks and know certain things about Far Eastern culture is sort of hard grained into us as Westerners. And yet in the Far East, they kind of, not everybody, it's not across the board, but a lot of people are like, oh, you know about us? So that's an interesting
Well, they like to adopt the Western.
Absolutely. And it's funny, going all the way back, and I know I do this all the time, so I apologize, but going all the way back to, say, even ancient Rome, like, they were obsessed with Egyptian culture and with Far Eastern silk. Like, if it was foreign, they wanted it. So that's something that's intrinsic to Western civilization. And I don't mean that in sort of the alt-right, you know, whatever sort of way. I mean, the way the West evolved.
Even today, what's the biggest movie right now?
Biggest movie right now?
Right now.
What is the biggest movie?
Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh,
I mean, which I haven't seen, but
I haven't seen it either.
But it's a big cultural thing now.
It's a big thing.
So we're still fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And always have been.
I think this is an interesting time culturally, actually, because it is a question. So when I was in Tucson, I was there for a wedding, and the groom was, I know he speaks Cantonese, so I'm going to assume he's from China. He, not personally from China, he was American, but his family was over there. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm getting this wrong here, but yeah, he's Chinese. And I asked him, you know, because I was building up in the ranks. I had gotten, you know, my first pair of PJs and was starting to learn Mandarin. Granted, he speaks Cantonese, but starting to learn Mandarin using these things. And I asked him, is this cultural appropriation? You know, like, I want to know. He's like, well, are you walking around the mall in the PJs? Like, no. Like, what are you doing when you're wearing the PJs? Teaching Tai Chi. Like, you've earned the Tai Chi, right? Yeah. Then rock on. I was like, oh, okay. I see how that works. Yeah. So, and that could just be him. I'm sure there are plenty of people who thought, like we say, there's always two minds to any subject. I'm sure there's plenty of traditionalists that would look at this and look at any Westerner teaching Tai Chi or teaching Kung Fu, or even, you know, karate and Aikido and these very traditional arts for Japan or for China or even Korea, Taekwondo, I'm sure there are some conservative, orthodox folks that like, these Westerners, they're destroying our art, versus, people that just want to share the wealth. And, I hate getting hung up on stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel you have to be semi-sensitive to it, just to make sure you're at least paying homage to the culture that gave birth to that which you are enjoying.
Oh, I think you do, especially, and I know I do. I think most people do. Yeah. They're just fascinated by it and want to learn it.
Right.
I mean, they had a lot of things right. What got me was that this was the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. Tai Chi was the healthcare.
Yeah, it was a big part of it.
They explained why, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. It works.
But then, now let me ask you this question, though, on this same, because as we're tiptoeing on this idea. Now, I became obsessed with Roman culture when I was doing my undergrad work. Obsessed with it. That's not cultural appropriation, right? Because it's Western, and all the Western countries, in fact, most of the world, sort of a child of the Roman Empire. Nobody cares about that. So if you study them, I learned Latin, I did all these sorts of things, dressed as Julius Caesar in enough Halloweens. And that's okay and fine.
Sure, it's history,
right?
And it's fascinating.
So why is it any different? Because I'm sure my Latin is not the same Latin that Caesar spoke. I don't even know what their accents would have sounded like. It's a 2,000-year-old, not 2,000-year-old dead, but it's 1,000-year-old dead language, certainly. But that's not cultural appropriation. So is it only because the Romans no longer exist that it's a problem and there are no Romans to get offended by it? Or is that really the key? And I guess that's my question. If there's no one to get offended, then it's free game. But if there is someone to get offended, then it's not. And we have to take in their sensibilities. That's what I'm wondering. That's my question.
Well, why would he be offended that we're studying and revere his culture?
He wasn't. He was not. There are people that would be, though. There are people that would. But he's younger than me, so let's do it. Let's just open the gates to everything and have at it. We'll pick out all the best parts and throw away the stuff that isn't.
Sure, we're global, man. We don't, yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I am all for it, because I want to, and I can't wait until we finally stop mucking around in the Middle East, and the Middle East kind of joins the modern world. They've got beautiful stuff down there. There are some cultural ideas. First off, their calligraphy, gorgeous. I've never seen a Coke can look so like art than when I saw it with Arabic on it. Like, that is a beautiful written language.
It looks beautiful when it's
beautiful.
Well, what about on the street when they're writing it like
even still
with spray paint? It's still beautiful.
Absolutely,
it's a beautiful looking,
gorgeous language, gorgeous written language. I mean, you figure, like, we have the Latin alphabet. The Romans were not big on the aesthetics of their writing. They were more about, let's get it across, make sure everybody can understand it. And they even screwed that up later on when they sort of adopted some Greek ideas and stopped leaving spaces between their words and all that kind of thing. But I wouldn't say the Latin alphabet is beautiful. I think it's very functional and very easy to guide and whatever, but it's also the language that I grew up with, or the alphabet that I grew up with. But yeah, even whether it's Far East Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Southeast Asian, or Middle Eastern script, they're gorgeous. Even Sanskrit and what we have, in Hindi out of the subcontinent, they're all gorgeous.
Ours is simple and compact. 26 letters, that's it. Boom.
Yeah.
They must have many more than on a Sanskrit typewriter would have. Absolutely. How many characters? I mean, if Chinese has 7,000, how many characters would be in these in Arabic? Well, I have no idea, but.
Well, I know there's an Arabic alphabet. I know it's very similar to, because it's.
So it might be the same amount of letters.
Yeah,
or similar,
it's
not a whole lot more or less.
What's the word for it? I'm drawing a blank here, but what is it? It's a Semitic language. That's the word I was going to say. Semitic language. So it's very similar to Hebrew, Old Hebrew, and I mean, you've seen Hebrew when that's like inscribed and so that's
beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah,
you know? Whereas, again, the Latin alphabet is fun. Like you can get your information very easily with it. You know what's been placarded into the wall, but we never really look at it as an art. We don't look at the written language as an art.
Well, if you write it out like a cursive, it can look very nice.
It can.
But that's a lost art. I understand they're not even teaching that anymore.
There's no need to.
Yeah, it's
really
kind of going the way of the...
Because, at this point, everything's typed, and it's faster to type than it is to write.
And that's even going to go out too, because you don't even have to type anymore. You can just speak into your phone and it'll text out.
You're right.
So
and at what point will that be a lost art? But thank you for joining us for that clip of our weekly podcast. If you want to get more bonage footage or join us for the entire podcast, head on over to Patreon, where our Eagle, Tiger, and Dragon subscribers get access to not only what we cast and talk about, but advanced lessons in your forms, in your Tai Chi, and in your life.